Good evening, everybody. My name is Igor. I was born in Siberia, but I live in San Francisco, California. And when you move from a very cold climate to a very warm climate, usually that does lots of good and bad things to you. And one of the things it does to you is it really gives you a very quirky sense of humor. So I love jokes, and my friend and partner Julian, who's already smiling, also loves jokes. I don't know if I'm good at telling them, but some of my favorite jokes are Chuck Norris jokes. I don't know if in Amsterdam, I know you guys are good in martial arts here. So but this is not a joke, this is for real. There is no sense in mining anymore because Chuck Norris already mined everything. And actually, he then did it for the second time. So he mined it twice. The reason I'm starting with this joke, first of all, is because it's a long evening and I'd rather prefer everybody to be happy listening to this presentation of Venture Fund. But secondly, because I do think the new time is coming, and it is the time for serious business. I'm not here to say that blockchain was ever not serious business or funny business, but I think we're moving more and more to wearing very grown-up hats, very grown-up clothes, and having much more grown-up attitude. Once again, not to suggest that early blockchain was in any way, kids playing in a sandbox. But if you look the way my friend and partner Julian and I look at so many ICOs, what you see is a definite trend to ICOs being more mature, more serious, people really thinking about business, people really solving very painful problems. And again, what Julian and I were just sitting here talking about is how every single presentation here was about something very real. Something very real in the sense that it is solving problems, but not only in that sense, but also in the sense of building a business, not just saying, oh, dude, here is a very painful problem, and do I have some solution for it? But also saying, here is how we're working on this. Here are the distribution channels. Here are the companies we're partnering with. And that is what sets apart, I think, grown-ups from kids. And by the way, I think we all are kids inside, but I think sometimes it's also important to make very mature decisions. And what I'm here to talk about is about TMT CryptoFund that I'm a co-founder. Julian Zegelman, who talked here earlier, is my fellow co-founder. We have two other co-founders. I will give you the following presentation will not the following feature contains mature subjects. The following presentation contains both self-serving presentation telling you what a wonderful fund we're building, but hopefully it also will contain some useful information for you as entrepreneurs, as I guess in many ways investors, as people who are thinking about where startups are moving in blockchain, where investors are going in blockchain. So I will try to give you a good measure of both, shameless self-promotion and also some hopefully useful, and I'll try as much as I can, fun information. Once again, I'll remind you that as somebody born in Siberia but living in California for a long time, I probably combine some very, very high and very low temperatures. So please don't hold it against me if at some points I go too far in my metaphors. What I wanted to talk about is how we are, all of us present here, are moving forward a very new industry, an industry of blockchain that used to be very different from everything else in entrepreneurship. It used to be that when you were just using a word, blockchain, people would right away be rolling their eyes and thinking, okay, whatever. blockchain, people from outside of the industry. But more and more, this is becoming real business. More and more, this is becoming not just about solving some very important, definitely very important philosophical issues of technology and business, but also becoming real business, something that you can generate revenues with, something that could solve very painful problems for which people are happy to pay, something that is based on business models, which are not necessarily, of course, transactional business models. They could be supported by advertising and a lot of other things. So what we started doing, three of my partners and myself, is we started looking at this industry through a very strange prism that venture capitalists use looking at the world. The longer you have been a venture capitalist, I'm on my 8th year, but I'm taking pills. I don't know if this joke works, but anyway, I'll try it. I'm on my 8th year as a VC, and I am taking pills for it, but I'm still not cured. So I'm in Amsterdam to see if I can find a cure. Not that one, because I live in San Francisco. You guys don't have anything. We don't. But when you're a venture capitalist, you have to have two somewhat opposing qualities in you. On the one hand, you have to be romantic. You have to look at potential of ideas. You have to look at something that is, you have to try to find something that is changing the world. But on the other hand, you can't be romantic all the time. You have to be cynical. And if you're not, you will learn your lessons very, very fast. The same way as if you are not very careful in dealing with Chuck Norris. Apparently, he can teach you certain lessons very fast. So the lessons you learn very fast as a VC is that you can only be a romantic to a certain point. Right? And typically what I'm talking about is you meet a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, I don't think again, on my 8th years and taking pills, being a VC, I don't think in those years, speaking with thousands, literally, of entrepreneurs, I can't remember even one single person that I genuinely disliked. I definitely remember people that I felt like, wow, he was or she was weird. But I wouldn't say I dislike that person. But, but the problem is, very often people come up with great ideas, and very often you see, switching to the ICO subject, you see wonderful ideas and people doing great things like blockchainizing real estate, blockchainizing the way people buy tickets, blockchainizing the way people organize concerts, etc. But then you come to them as an investor and you say, dude, this was really great. I really like what you're doing. So tell me about the business. And the dude says, well, it's going to be great. We're going to disintermediate. This is going to be beautiful, man. The margins are huge. You're going to make a lot of money. And you say, that sounds good, so tell me about the business. And the dude says, I just told you about the business. And you say, no, you told me about the idea. Now, can you tell me about the business? What is the business model? How are you going to go about customer acquisitions? What are your customer acquisition channels? Are you going to work through affiliates? Are you going to do advertising? What channels you will be advertising in? What is your PR strategy? What is your unique positioning? And very often, actually, as we move forward with blockchain industry, there are more and more positive answers you get. But more often than not, still, people sort of look at you and kind of think you're an idiot. You don't understand the beauty of blockchain, how it's all going to solve things for itself, but it's not going to solve things for itself. And as a matter of fact, if you're working on a blockchain solution for B2C, business to consumers, typically it's easier because you could probably persuade certain customers to use your solution instead of centralized solutions. But if you're talking about B2B especially, and if you're saying, oh, we're going to change the way big banks do business, then the first question to you is, well, it's beautiful, but what's your strategy of getting to the banks? And more often than not, people don't even understand why should they have a strategy of doing that. They don't understand that they should be building real business. And this is where venture capitalists come on the scene and try to tell bad Chuck Norris jokes. The thing about venture capitalists, and I keep telling it all the time, is yes, of course, we're much more arrogant. That is true. Because all the time people find you and they pitch you. It's kind of like probably, I guess, I would never know, but it's probably like being a great writer or a great actor or a great film director, or somebody is drinking wine next to you and you say, oh, by the way, I shot some films, and the person says, oh, I have a great film idea for you. So you're getting used to that, but it's definitely not that venture capitalists are smarter than non-venture capitalists. I don't think so. But there are certain differences between venture capitalists and non-venture capitalists, especially between successful venture capitalists, and now a small, shameless self-promotion, and others. Successful venture capitalists had their hearts broken more often than all the others, and they learn from this experience. And one thing they learn from this experience is to follow the first rule, which I just talked about, to really focus on business, not just on technology, and to ask the right questions about how are you going to turn this wonderful idea into a business. But the second thing is to do a lot more legwork. And that is really the difference between venture capitalists and others. Venture capitalists do not just, meet a random person here and there and say, oh, this is a great deal, I like the guy, I have a good feeling, let's invest. They do a lot of legwork. They go to a lot of shows. They develop a huge network of connections. They have analysts who go out of their, well, of course, supposed to go out of their way, to analyze deals and to compare the deals. They have network with their portfolio companies who bring deals to them. They have network with other venture capitalists who like to share deals with them. They are constantly looking for specific segments, trying to constantly be up to speed on what's happening in those segments. So the first difference between a successful venture capitalist and others is that a successful venture capitalist focuses on companies that have really high chances of actually building a business. The second difference is that a venture capitalist spends a lot of time going to places, talking to people, but mostly, of course, listening to people, telling bad Chuck Norris jokes, of course, sometimes just to make sure people kind of sort of wake up, and trying to analyze things, trying to think about things very intensely, and involving other people, and involving experts, and involving analysts. So what I'm saying right now is I think one of the wonderful things that is happening and will be happening with blockchain industry will be, and it is happening, is an influx of people who built successful businesses before, an influx of people who invested in successful businesses before. And I think the opportunity is ripe right now for a much more successful business model of starting startups and investing in them than in centralized technologies. So what we're building right now, TMT Investments, is a fund that will invest in companies before the companies go ICO, thus giving these companies money to build a product, to market the product, to package the product, to actually focus not just on technologies, but to focus on business, to build really great ways of scaling the product, the partnerships, the affiliate programs, the right targeted advertising, the retargeting, the right team, the operational teams, the marketing team, building a mechanism, a well-oiled mechanism that knows what the customer acquisition for each channel is, what is the customer lifetime value, that tries different business models, that tries different approaches. So what I'm talking about is something somewhat boring, but something that really always succeeds. Great business. Great business usually beats great technology. I would say almost without exception, great business beats great technology. But when you combine a great technology with great business, that is, with some exceptions, unbeatable. So what we're trying to do is to find those blockchain companies that are really very business oriented, to help them on a reasonably early pre-ICO stage to give them money and to assist them in creating an ICO. And then we want to turn back to the investors in the fund and do several lovely things. First of all, we're going to give some tokens to them for free of those companies. Secondly, we're going to exchange some of the tokens that they get for the tokens in the fund. And thirdly, we could give them the discounts that nobody else could give them unless they're insiders in this company. So to investors in the fund, it's a great deal as well. Because, and now I'm pitching to you, which I love doing. I think all VCs should be pitching to entrepreneurs versus the other way. I think the best way of investing in startups, the best way investing in ICO, pre-ICO startups, is a smart way. And I'm not saying, I'm smart or my partners, although I think Julian is pretty smart. I'm not saying we're the smartest. I'm saying we have been, are, and will be doing a lot of legwork working on these companies we're investing in. That's reason number one to invest in VC funds like ours. Number two, we're going to have the power of the numbers. Our average check is $2 to $3 million, so we can get a lot for that. We can get greater conditions, we can get insider information, we can get information rights, we can get greater discounted tokens, we could get deals that otherwise you would not get. And I can't tell you, but we did get some deals that are extremely hard to get without navigating and without writing more significant checks and trading favors with other investors. So basically, the idea of a successful venture capital fund is in doing a lot of legwork, being very focused on business versus just technology, certainly on business and technology, but mostly on funding the people who are very serious and very concrete about building a business. And also on being very fair to the investors in the fund, sharing the benefits with them immediately. That's basically the presentation I wanted to give you. And since I'm out of bad Chuck Norris jokes, I don't know how to finish this one. But I have Julian with me.
We're actually a European fund. The funny thing is, the fund that we're launching now is a second fund in the fund family, but the prior fund is trading on the London Stock Exchange. TMT Investments, we've been trading on the LSE since 2010. So, that's a global world. You get two Russians and an American and a British man running a venture capital fund that's trading in London and is based in London, Moscow, and San Francisco. And that's all I got to say about that.
No, thanks so much, Julian. And actually, one point, thanks for helping in shameless self-promotion. One last point to finish this with, Julian is right, we've been doing this for 7 years. The fund is very successful. We invested in over 40 companies at 11 exits. We're rated in top 2% of Cambridge Associates research of venture capital funds. We have a very high IRR, the measurement by which VCs measure the internal rate of return. So we know what we've been doing. Julian and I invested in a lot of companies of our own. We built some very successful companies. Two of our partners built a unicorn and $1.6 billion company from zero, brought it from zero to over 5,000 employees to one of the largest media companies and sold it. So we do what we preach and we know stuff. So one part of my presentation, consider focusing on business when you're building something or when you're investing into something. The second part of my presentation, we're a wonderful fund. Consider, pitching us. Consider investing in us if this is your thing. Consider sharing deals with us if you're an investor. And I'd be happy for you to try to catch the cube.
There's time for one or two questions. I see one there.
Besides the blockchain, do you have industries that you focus on? IoT, smart cities, whatever it is.
So there is the old fund that Julian has just mentioned, TMT Investments PLC. You can check it out. It has a site, etc. We invested in 6 or 7 verticals. Among them was cloud like cloud storage, cloud computing, e-commerce, especially subscription. We did make one IoT investment, which turns out to actually be working out really nicely. But we're, in general, to be frank, with the previous fund and with the current one, we're rather agnostic. We're rather focused not on specific segments, but on the ability of the team to build business. So we wouldn't invest in medical, pharmaceuticals, or biotech because we don't understand it. But anything that's generally technology where people say, listen, this is business, this is how we're scaling, we're definitely interested. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
One more question. Hi.
Hi.
Companies or startups that raise money and buy ICO, they get money in some kind of a foundation maybe, or Ether or whatever. But how do you think that this money maybe in the future will be disclosed or will be given to the actual company by smart contracts? And are milestones being defined at some point where actually the venture capital the function of venture capital is being programmed into the smart contract? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's actually an excellent question, and I should have talked about this on my own. I think one of the issues, I assume that the crowd present here has been reading a lot about ICOs, participated in ICOs, invested, had their own, advised, etc. So one of the there are lots of different statistics out there about the ICOs that already have been completed. Quite a few of them were fraudulent. Quite a few of them are starting to run out of money. Quite a few of them are reneging on their promises of developing stuff by November, February, et cetera, et cetera. So there are, as Julian mentioned, lots of lawyers are very happy right now because there are lots of class action lawsuits. So there are lots of problems. There are lots of problems, and one of the problems had to do, and I think this is changing slowly, and my projection, my hope actually, is that this year, next year will be very different. We will be looking into more real businesses rather than some fata morgana, strange ideas up in smoke. What we see is what you were just describing, this problem where the money is not given based on any smart contract, where the entrepreneurs are not beholden to specific promises, where there is no mechanism of payment for delivery of certain services, payment for delivery of specific, next level of software, achieving next level of business. What's interesting is I saw a few blockchain technologies that are attempting to take care of that. So for example, one is basing any kind of transactions, any kind of tranches on proof of work, smart contract, finish this stage and then automatically get this released. Another one actually uses a bunch of peers to review the next stage of software before payment could be released, etc. My feeling is that we will be looking at more and more constraints on the side of investors that will be applied toward investing in ICOs. I think there probably will be some platforms. I think there will probably be some new currencies, digital currencies that work like that. I think there probably will be some funds that will not be just giving the full amount. So for example, we're planning to invest roughly $2-3 million per company. We will see, but my guess is we will probably not be releasing the full amount right away. We will probably be putting some conditions. There are lots of very creative ways, and people from the finance can tell you that sometimes the way you actually create a contract with somebody and investing in an ICO is a contract. is you can variate the valuation. So in this case, the value of the token or the amount that you pay for it based on what was delivered. You could agree to certain specific things. For example, sales need to be at level X in order for you to have this amount released, or your release shouldn't have any major bugs until a certain time for this to be released, or even certain clawbacks where you could take the money back, they're in escrow, and they will automatically be released to you if a panel of, let's say, 12 or 100 people will not sign off, will not say, yes, I agree, this is fully working, etc. So I think it's a big problem, and I'm actually, to be frank, I'm surprised that we're still treating, in most cases, we're still treating ICOs and blockchain startups as if, you know, this money is really nothing. They're given lots of money, and on their side, there is very little but, you know, a lovely white paper and a website saying, oh, we're going to develop this. So, yeah, you want to chime in? Mm-hmm. I would say no. I wouldn't say that. Sure. Sure. No. So the question is, forgive me if I'm misinterpreting it. You are saying that business is more important than technology too. That wouldn't be, maybe I formulated it not well. For our investments to be successful, we need to focus more on the ability of the technology to build business. But the question is, you mentioned that our partners built a business that went from 0 employees to 5,000. And wouldn't you, I agree that technologies we're building, blockchain technology, sometimes would replace a lot of jobs. So the question is, why would you, be looking into technologies? Are they just buzzword for you? And what's blockchain for you? Am I correct too? More or less. Why blockchain? I think it is changing the world. I think, like I said at the very beginning, that as a VC, you have to have two, as a successful VC, you have to have two qualities. You have to be romantic and you have to be cynical. So when I'm approaching anything as a potential investment target, I approach it from the romantic point of view. Is it going to make the world better? Is this going to be a beautiful technology? Is this going to streamline certain processes? Is this going to solve some incongruencies and some pains? Is this going to be elegant, et cetera, et cetera? But I also have to approach it from the cynical point of view. Is this business going to beat other businesses? So is it a buzzword? To me, no, because if it were a buzzword, I think we would not be building a blockchain focused fund. We right now are not even investing in anything other than blockchain for the last maybe year. So no, I think it's a lot more than just buzzword, but in many ways it is a buzzword. It is something that people are attracted to, and you know, just 2 years ago, very few people worked in that. But I think for us, this is something serious. But we also realize that in many ways, it is a buzzword. It's something that. All right, sorry, we can talk later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.